The text message glowed on my phone screen like a slap across my face. No place for you at the wedding. Tight with venue. I stared at those 12 words while sitting in my cramped studio apartment surrounded by the dusty rose bridesmaid dress hanging on my closet door and scattered wedding planning notes covering my coffee table. Sarah, my younger sister, had just uninvited me from her wedding with the emotional warmth of a parking ticket. The familiar sting of being the family disappointment washed over me again. Sarah, the golden child, always getting everything handed to her while I struggled to make ends meet. But something shifted inside me. Instead of crying, I opened my laptop and booked a spontaneous flight to Hawaii for the exact wedding weekend. Purchase complete. I methodically folded my summer clothes into my worn suitcase while my mind wandered through 32 years of being Sarah's older sister. She was 28 now, still living in the bubble of parental adoration that had protected her since birth. Our parents, Linda and Robert Hendricks, owned a thriving accounting firm in suburban Seattle, and they had always made it crystal clear which daughter represented their pride and joy. The evidence stretched back decades. When Sarah wanted to attend the expensive private university for her business degree, Mom and Dad wrote the check without hesitation. When I needed college funds, they suggested community college and student loans. Sarah received a down payment for her house at 25. I was still renting my tiny apartment at 32, scraping together money each month while working as a marketing coordinator for a small nonprofit. The pattern had repeated itself through every milestone. Sarah's elaborate graduation parties where I served as the unpaid photographer. Her housewarming celebration where I spent my weekend organizing decorations and cleaning up afterward. Even her engagement party last year, which I had helped plan from start to finish, coordinating vendors and managing guest lists, only to watch Sarah accept all the credit while I remained invisible in family photos. This wedding exclusion felt like the culmination of something much deeper than venue space limitations. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed Jessica Martinez, my closest friend since nursing school. Well, she had finished nursing school and became a successful nurse practitioner. I had switched to marketing after 2 years, another family disappointment. "Girl, you sound stressed," Jessica said after hearing my voice. "What did Sarah do now?" I explained the wedding situation while stuffing swimsuits into my suitcase. Jessica listened with the patience of someone who had witnessed years of family dysfunction from the sidelines. "Wait," Jessica interrupted. "That doesn't make sense. Last month when I ran into your mom at the grocery store, she mentioned that Sarah was disappointed you didn't want to be involved in wedding planning. She said Sarah told her you were too busy with work and didn't seem interested in being a bridesmaid." My hands froze over my suitcase. "What?" "Yeah, your mom seemed worried about it. She asked if I thought you were okay because Sarah said you refused the bridesmaid role and didn't want family responsibilities interfering with your career." The room felt like it was tilting. I had never refused anything. Sarah had simply never asked me to be a bridesmaid. I had assumed I would be included automatically and had been waiting for her to bring up dress shopping and planning details. "Jessica, I never refused to be a bridesmaid. I've been waiting for her to tell me what she needed me to do. I bought a dress based on the color scheme she posted on social media." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched uncomfortably long. "Tammy," Jessica said carefully, "I think your sister has been telling your parents a very different story about your involvement." After hanging up with Jessica, I drove to my parents' house under the pretense of picking up some old photo albums I needed. Mom was in the kitchen preparing dinner and her phone sat charging on the counter. When she stepped outside to water her garden, I quickly scrolled through the family group chat that included Mom, Dad, Sarah, and our cousin Amanda. The messages from the past 3 months painted a disturbing picture. Sarah had been systematically crafting a narrative about my supposed disinterest in family events. Tammy said she's too focused on her little marketing job to worry about wedding stuff. Read one message from 6 weeks ago. She thinks family obligations are holding her back from career opportunities. Read another. I tried to include her, but she made it clear she doesn't want the responsibility of being a bridesmaid. Each message built on the last, creating an elaborate fiction where I was the selfish older sister too absorbed in my own life to care about family milestones. Our parents had responded with disappointment and concern, wondering when I had become so distant and career-focused. The most painful message was from last week. I think Tammy resents my happiness. She seems angry that I'm getting married before her. Maybe it's better if she doesn't come to the wedding at all. I don't want negative energy on my special day. My hands trembled as I read my parents' supportive responses telling Sarah to protect herself from my alleged negativity and selfishness. They had accepted her version of reality completely, never once asking for my side of the story. I heard Mom's footsteps on the back porch and quickly put her phone back in its charging position. She walked into the kitchen with dirt under her fingernails and smiled at me with what I now recognized as forced politeness. "How are you doing, honey? Sarah mentioned you're going through a difficult time with work stress." Another lie. My work was going better than ever. I had just completed a successful fundraising campaign that exceeded our goals by 40%. "I'm fine, Mom. Actually, I'm taking a vacation this weekend, going to Hawaii." Her eyebrows lifted with surprise. "This weekend? But that's when—" She trailed off, realizing she was about to mention the wedding I had supposedly rejected attending. "When what, Mom?" She busied herself with wiping down already clean counters. "Oh, nothing important. Just family stuff. Have a wonderful trip, sweetheart." I walked out of my childhood home carrying a box of photo albums and a much clearer understanding of how systematically I had been erased from my own family narrative. Sarah hadn't just uninvited me from her wedding. She had spent months poisoning our parents against me, ensuring that when the exclusion happened, they would support her decision wholeheartedly. Sitting in my car in their driveway, I felt a strange sense of liberation washing over the hurt. For the first time in my life, I was seeing the family dynamics with complete clarity. Sarah's golden child status wasn't just about favoritism. It was about control manipulation and her desperate need to eliminate any competition for parental attention. The boarding pass on my phone confirmed my Thursday morning flight to Maui. While my manipulative sister walked down the aisle on Saturday, I would be walking on a beach 3,000 miles away, free from the toxic dynamics that had shaped my entire life. The oceanfront hotel room in Maui exceeded every expectation I had held about luxury travel. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased an endless expanse of turquoise water, while the private balcony offered direct access to sounds of waves crashing against volcanic rocks below. I had splurged on accommodations far beyond my usual budget, deciding that if I was going to miss my sister's wedding, I might as well do it in paradise. Thursday evening, I sat cross-legged on the plush king-sized bed with my laptop open, scrolling through social media updates about Sarah's wedding preparations. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was following my own family's activities like a distant observer rather than a participant. Sarah's Instagram stories showed her getting manicures with bridesmaids I didn't recognize, trying on her dress one final time, and posing with Marcus Chen, her fiancé of 18 months. Marcus appeared in every photo with his characteristic confident smile, designer clothes, and expensive watch. According to Family Conversations, he was a successful technology entrepreneur who had swept Sarah off her feet with his charm and business acumen. Something about Marcus had always bothered me, though I had never been able to articulate exactly what. He seemed too polished, too perfect, like someone performing the role of successful businessman rather than actually being one. His stories about his various startup ventures changed depending on who was asking, and he always managed to redirect conversations away from specific details about his work. I found myself studying his social media presence more carefully than I ever had before. His professional profiles went back only 2 years, which seemed odd for someone who claimed to be 34 years old. Before 2023, Marcus Chen appeared to have no digital footprint whatsoever. Friday morning, I took my coffee to a beachside cafe called Pineapple Sunrise, settling into a corner table with my laptop, while tourists chatted around me in multiple languages. I continued my casual investigation into Marcus, telling myself it was just idle curiosity rather than any serious concern. At the table next to mine, 2 businessmen in their 50s were discussing a consulting project they had completed in Portland, Oregon. Their conversation drifted from client meetings to local news, and I half listened while researching Marcus's supposed business ventures. That embezzlement case from a few years back still makes me nervous about working with tech startups. One man said to his companion, "Remember that Marcus Chen character who disappeared right before federal charges were filed, stole over $200,000 from employee pension funds, and vanished into thin air?" My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "Poor guy's name was Marcus Chen, too," the other businessman replied. "Different person entirely, of course, but it made me paranoid when I heard our new client had the same name. Turns out, our Marcus is completely legitimate, successful businessman with solid references." My laptop screen displayed Marcus's LinkedIn profile, which listed his previous experience as technology consultant in Portland from 2018 to 2021. The timeline matched perfectly with what these businessmen were discussing. I spent the next 4 hours researching everything I could find about Marcus Chen and embezzlement cases in Portland. Public records revealed a complicated financial fraud investigation involving Pinnacle Technology Solutions, a software development company that had handled payroll and benefits administration for dozens of smaller businesses throughout the Pacific Northwest. Marcus Chen, age 31 at the time, had served as Chief Financial Operations Manager for Pinnacle Technology. According to court documents I found through news archives, he had systematically diverted money from employee pension contributions into personal accounts over an 18-month period. When auditors discovered the missing funds in late 2021, Marcus had already liquidated his assets and disappeared. The investigation remained open because Marcus had never been located or arrested. Federal warrants for his arrest were still active, and the FBI considered him a fugitive from justice. Victim families had lost their entire retirement savings, and several small businesses had faced bankruptcy after their employee pension funds were emptied. I stared at the mugshot photo from the federal warrant. The man in the picture had shorter hair and wore glasses, but the facial structure was unmistakably identical to Sarah's fiancé. Marcus Chen wasn't a successful entrepreneur. He was a criminal who had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars and assumed a new identity to avoid prosecution. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Getting my hair done tomorrow is going to be perfect." The irony felt surreal. While Sarah prepared for her dream wedding, I sat in a Hawaiian cafe discovering that her future husband was a federal fugitive who had destroyed multiple families' financial security. The expensive engagement ring she loved so much, the lavish wedding venue, the planned honeymoon to Europe. Everything was funded by stolen retirement money from hardworking families. But my investigation revealed something even more disturbing. Marcus hadn't chosen Sarah randomly. He had specifically targeted her because of our family's accounting business and financial connections. Through Sarah, He had gained access to information about our parents' clients, their business operations, and their financial systems. Over the past year and a half, Marcus had been positioning himself to commit an even larger theft. He had learned the internal processes of Hendrick's accounting, gained our parents' trust, and convinced them to give him limited access to their business systems under the guise of helping them modernize their technology infrastructure. The wedding wasn't just a romantic celebration. It was Marcus's exit strategy. After the honeymoon, he planned to disappear again with whatever money he could steal from our family's business, and their clients leaving Sarah emotionally and financially devastated while he started a new life somewhere else. I closed my laptop and walked to the edge of the cafe's deck, looking out at the pristine beach where other vacationers played volleyball and built sandcastles with their children. The contrast between this peaceful paradise and the criminal conspiracy unfolding back home felt overwhelming. My phone contained screenshots of federal warrant information court documents and evidence that could save my family from financial ruin. But using this information meant returning home and inserting myself into the wedding situation that Sarah had explicitly excluded me from. The sun was setting over the Pacific Ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that belonged on postcards. I had escaped my sister's manipulation and found perfect solitude in one of the most beautiful places on Earth. But I was also the only person who knew that tomorrow's wedding was actually the final stage of an elaborate financial crime that would destroy my family. I had 24 hours to decide whether to protect the people who had spent months believing lies about me or to let them face the consequences of trusting Sarah's judgment over mine. Saturday morning in Maui dawned with the kind of perfect weather that travel brochures promise but rarely deliver. I ordered room service breakfast and settled onto my balcony with fresh fruit Kona coffee and my phone prepared to spend the day blissfully disconnected from family drama 3,000 miles away. That resolution lasted exactly 47 minutes. My phone rang at 8:37 a.m. Hawaiian time, displaying my cousin Amanda's contact information. Amanda was Sarah's age and had always been closer to her than to me, making her morning call particularly unexpected. "Tammy, thank God you answered." Amanda's voice carried an edge of panic that immediately grabbed my attention. "I'm at the wedding venue and everything is falling apart. Sarah is having a complete breakdown, and I didn't know who else to call." I set down my coffee cup with deliberate care. "What's happening?" The venue coordinator just came to the bridal suite saying Marcus's payment bounced. Not just the final payment, but apparently all of his checks for the past month. The bank says there are insufficient funds and his account might be fraudulent. My stomach dropped as my research from yesterday confirmed itself in real time. "Where's Marcus?" That's the problem. Nobody can find him. Sarah has been calling and texting all morning, but he's not responding. The wedding is supposed to start in 4 hours, and the venue is threatening to cancel everything unless they receive immediate payment. I could hear voices arguing in the background, along with what sounded like Sarah crying. "Amanda, can you put me on video call? I want to see what's happening." "Hold on." The screen switched to show Amanda's face against the backdrop of what should have been an elegant bridal preparation room. Instead, the scene looked like a disaster zone. Sarah sat in a white silk robe with her hair in hot rollers mascara streaking down her cheeks, while 2 bridesmaids tried unsuccessfully to calm her down. "The caterers are here demanding payment too," Amanda whispered into the phone, "and the florist, and the photographer. Apparently Marcus gave everyone bad checks and nobody wants to provide services without cash up front." Through the phone screen, I watched Sarah frantically dialing Marcus's number again while shouting at her maid of honor to fix this somehow. The woman who had spent months systematically excluding me from her special day was now facing its complete collapse. "Put the phone closer to Sarah," I said. I want to hear what she's saying. Amanda moved across the room and I could hear my sister's increasingly desperate voice. Marcus, pick up the phone. Where are you? Everyone wants money and I don't know what to tell them. You promised everything was handled. Marcus, please. A woman I recognized as the wedding planner entered the frame carrying a clipboard and wearing an expression of barely controlled frustration. Sarah, I need to be honest with you. This isn't just about today's vendors. I called the hotel where you're supposed to have your honeymoon, and they said Mr. Chen's credit card was declined for the room deposit. I also checked with the airline, and your tickets to Europe were purchased with a card that's now been reported as fraudulent. Sarah's crying intensified into something approaching hysterics. That's impossible. Marcus owns 3 companies. He has plenty of money. There must be some mistake with the bank. I muted my phone and spoke quietly to Amanda. Has anyone tried going to Marcus's apartment? Sarah's brother-in-law drove over there an hour ago. The apartment manager said Marcus moved out Wednesday and left no forwarding address. He took everything and disappeared. My investigation had been correct in every detail. Marcus had used the wedding timeline as his escape plan, liquidating whatever assets he could access and vanishing before anyone discovered the extent of his fraud. But the situation was worse than even I had anticipated. Through Amanda's phone, I could see my parents arriving at the bridal suite looking confused and increasingly concerned. My father carried a checkbook clearly prepared to attempt solving the crisis with their personal funds. Dad, I need $50,000 right now to save this wedding, Sarah demanded through her tears. All the vendors want cash immediately, or they're leaving. My father's face went pale. $50,000 was a significant amount, even for their successful accounting business, especially for emergency weekend payments that couldn't be processed through normal business banking. Sarah, sweetheart, I don't understand what happened to Marcus's payments, Dad said carefully. Can you explain why all of his checks bounced? I don't know, Sarah screamed. Something is wrong with his bank accounts. Maybe there was a computer error or his business partners made a mistake with transfers. Marcus will fix everything when he gets here. But Marcus wasn't coming. I knew with absolute certainty that he was already hundreds or thousands of miles away, probably using a different name and identity, while my family faced the financial and emotional wreckage of his carefully planned deception. My mother sat down heavily in a chair near Sarah, looking older than I had ever seen her. Honey, maybe we should postpone the wedding until we can figure out what's happening with Marcus's finances. No. Sarah's voice reached a pitch that made everyone in the room flinch. This is my wedding day. I am getting married today no matter what. You have to fix this, Mom. Dad has the money. Our family can afford to pay for everything, and Marcus will reimburse us later. Amanda moved to a corner of the room and spoke quietly into the phone. Tammy, your parents are talking about liquidating business accounts to pay for this wedding. Your dad looks like he might be having chest pains from stress. I watched my family destroying themselves financially and emotionally to salvage Sarah's fantasy wedding to a criminal who had already escaped with stolen money. The same parents who had believed every lie Sarah told about my supposed selfishness were now preparing to bankrupt themselves to protect her from the consequences of her poor judgment. The irony was overwhelming. Sarah had excluded me from this wedding, but I was the only person with information that could save our family from financial ruin. I held evidence that Marcus was a federal fugitive, documentation of his previous crimes, and proof that his entire relationship with Sarah was an elaborate fraud designed to access our family's business accounts. But revealing this information meant inserting myself into the crisis that Sarah had insisted I wasn't welcome to participate in. I unmuted my phone and spoke directly to Amanda. Tell Sarah I'm flying home immediately. Tell her I have important information about Marcus that she needs to hear before she makes any decisions about the wedding or asks our parents for money. You're coming home, but you're in Hawaii. I'll be on the first flight I can book. Don't let our parents write any checks until I get there. Tell them I have evidence about Marcus that changes everything. The last image I saw before ending the video call was Sarah looking directly into the phone with an expression of confusion and desperate hope. The sister who had told me there was no place for me at her wedding was about to discover that I was the only person who could save her from complete disaster. I was already opening airline websites to search for emergency flights back to Seattle. My peaceful Hawaiian vacation was about to end, but I was returning home with all the power in a situation where my family finally needed me more than I had ever needed them. Sunday morning in Hawaii greeted me with the kind of pristine weather that usually makes people feel grateful to be alive. Instead, I sat at a beachside cafe with my laptop searching for red-eye flights back to Seattle while nursing my third cup of Kona coffee and wondering if I was making a terrible mistake. The peaceful rhythm of waves against sand provided a stark contrast to the family chaos I was voluntarily choosing to enter. I could stay in paradise for 3 more days, let Sarah face the consequences of her poor judgment, and return home after the crisis had resolved itself naturally. Nobody was forcing me to rescue the people who had spent months believing lies about my character. But every time I considered staying in Hawaii, I pictured my father's pale face when Sarah demanded $50,000 and my mother aging 10 years in the span of a single conversation. Whatever Sarah had done to manipulate them, Linda and Robert Hendricks were still my parents, and they didn't deserve to lose their life savings to a federal fugitive. I booked a red-eye flight departing Monday at 11:45 p.m., which would get me to Seattle Tuesday morning. The ticket cost more than I typically spent on groceries in 3 months, but I charged it to my credit card anyway and tried not to calculate how many months it would take to pay off this impulsive decision. Monday morning, I treated myself to a final perfect Hawaiian breakfast while watching surfers navigate waves that looked impossibly large and dangerous to my landlocked perspective. My phone showed 17 missed calls from family members since Sunday evening, but I hadn't returned any of them. Whatever crisis was developing at home, I wanted to gather complete information before inserting myself into the situation. At 11:30 a.m. Hawaiian time, while I sipped coffee and read a romance novel about people whose lives were significantly less complicated than mine, my phone exploded with activity that made it impossible to ignore any longer. 55 missed calls, 37 text messages, 4 voicemails. I opened the text messages first, scrolling through increasingly frantic communications from Amanda, Jessica, my parents, and even Sarah herself. The timeline painted a picture of escalating disaster that had moved far beyond wedding venue problems. Amanda, Sunday, 9th, 15 p.m. Tammy, call me immediately. Something happened with your dad's business accounts. Amanda, Sunday, 10:43 p.m. Your parents are freaking out. The bank called about suspicious activity. Call home now. Jessica, Monday, 12:22 a.m. Your mom called me crying. She said someone tried to steal money from their business. They think it was Marcus. Dad, Monday, 6th, 17 a.m. Tammy, we need to talk. Emergency situation with the accounting firm. Please call as soon as you get this message. Mom, Monday, 7:45 a.m. Sweetheart, we were wrong about everything. We need your help. Please come home. Sarah, Monday, 8th, 33 a.m. I know you hate me, but please call back. Marcus is gone and everything is falling apart. I called my father's cell phone and he answered before the first ring finished. Tammy, thank God. Where are you? I'm in Hawaii, Dad, but I'm flying home tonight. What happened? Marcus tried to steal $300,000 from our business account Saturday night while we were dealing with the wedding crisis. The bank's fraud department caught it and froze everything, but we could have lost money that belongs to our clients. My hands tightened around the phone. Marcus had used the wedding chaos as cover for the larger theft I had suspected he was planning. How did he get access to the business accounts? That's the problem. Dad's voice sounded exhausted and defeated. Over the past year, Sarah convinced us to let Marcus help modernize our computer systems and financial software. We gave him administrative access because he claimed to be a technology expert. He used that access to set up fraudulent wire transfers that would have emptied our operating accounts. I closed my eyes, feeling sick about how perfectly Marcus had orchestrated this entire scheme. What did the bank tell you? They said this appears to be part of a sophisticated fraud operation. Marcus knew exactly how to bypass our security protocols because he had been studying our systems for months. If the transfers had gone through, our business would have been bankrupted and our clients would have lost their money too. Where's Sarah now? She's at our house completely devastated. She trusted him with everything, her savings, her heart access to family information. She feels responsible for putting our business at risk. Dad paused. Tammy, we owe you an enormous apology. Sarah told us things about your attitude and priorities that were completely untrue. We should have talked to you directly instead of accepting her version of events. The vindication felt both satisfying and hollow. What kind of things did she tell you? She said you were jealous of her success and didn't want to be involved in family celebrations because they interfered with your career ambitions. She claimed you refused to be a bridesmaid and didn't care about the wedding. We believed her because... He trailed off. Because you've always believed her over me. Yes, he admitted quietly. Because we've always found it easier to trust Sarah's version of events instead of asking difficult questions. That was wrong, and we're paying the price now. I heard my mother's voice in the background asking to speak to me. Tammy. Mom said when Dad passed her the phone. I called Jessica last night because we didn't know how to reach you, and she told me some things that made me realize how badly we've misunderstood this situation. What did Jessica tell you? She said you had bought a bridesmaid dress based on Sarah's social media posts and had been waiting for Sarah to include you in wedding planning. She said you never refused to be involved. Sarah just never asked you to be involved. The conversation I should have had with my parents months ago was finally happening while I sat 3,000 miles away in a Hawaiian cafe, surrounded by tourists enjoying vacation activities, while my family confronted the wreckage of years of dysfunction. Mom, Sarah has been lying to you about my feelings and my actions for years. This wedding situation wasn't the first time. We're beginning to understand that, she said softly. We need to have some very serious conversations when you get home. There's something else you need to know about Marcus, I said. I have information that might help with the legal situation. What kind of information? I explained my research into Marcus's criminal background, his previous identity as a federal fugitive, and the evidence I had compiled about his pattern of targeting families through romance scams. My parents listened in stunned silence as I detailed the scope of his fraudulent activities. You discovered all of this while you were on vacation, Dad asked. I discovered it because I was on vacation, I corrected. If I had been at the wedding dealing with family drama and trying to manage Sarah's crisis, I never would have had the time or emotional distance to investigate Marcus properly. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Sarah's decision to exclude me from her wedding had accidentally positioned me to save our family from financial ruin. Tammy. Mom said, we need you to come home and help us figure out how to handle this legally. The FBI is involved because of the bank fraud, and they want to interview everyone who had contact with Marcus. I'm already booked on a flight tonight. I'll be home Tuesday morning. Thank you, she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. We don't deserve your help after how we've treated you, but thank you for coming home anyway. After ending the call, I sat in the cafe for another hour, processing the magnitude of what had happened. My sister's wedding had collapsed. Her fiancé was a federal fugitive, my family's business had nearly been destroyed, and my parents had finally recognized the toxic dynamics they had enabled for decades. I could have felt vindicated or triumphant, but mostly I felt sad about all the years we had wasted on misunderstandings that could have been avoided if anyone had bothered to ask for my perspective instead of accepting Sarah's manufactured version of reality. My phone buzzed with one final text message from Sarah. "I'm sorry for everything. I know you probably hate me, but I'm grateful you're coming home. I don't know how to fix any of this." I typed back, "I don't hate you. I'll see you tomorrow and we'll figure it out together." The red-eye flight to Seattle was going to be long and uncomfortable, but I was returning home with more power and clarity than I had ever possessed in my relationships with my family. Sarah's manipulation had finally been exposed. My parents had recognized their mistakes, and I held evidence that could help law enforcement catch a criminal who had hurt multiple families. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is being excluded from situations where you would have been too emotionally involved to see clearly. My sister's cruelty had accidentally given me the distance I needed to become the person my family actually needed me to be. Tuesday morning, the red-eye flight from Hawaii deposited me at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, feeling like I had been awake for approximately 72 consecutive hours. The 6-hour time difference combined with airline coffee that tasted like caffeinated water left me functioning on pure adrenaline and determination. Jessica met me at baggage claim carrying a large coffee from my favorite local roastery and wearing the expression of someone who had spent days fielding panicked phone calls from my family members. "You look terrible," she said, handing me the coffee and pulling me into a hug. "But also kind of badass. Flying home from Hawaii to save your family from a federal fugitive is very action movie heroine of you." "I feel more like the exhausted sister who's tired of cleaning up other people's messes," I replied, but the coffee tasted like salvation, and Jessica's presence reminded me that I had at least one person who had always believed in my version of events. During the drive to my parents' house, Jessica filled me in on details that my phone conversations hadn't captured. Sarah had spent Sunday and Monday in complete emotional collapse, alternating between denying that Marcus could be a criminal and blaming herself for trusting him. My parents had been fielding calls from FBI agents, bank investigators, and angry wedding vendors while trying to assess the damage to their business reputation. "Your dad looks like he's aged 10 years since Saturday," Jessica said. "And your mom keeps saying she can't believe they were so wrong about everything." "What about Sarah? How is she handling the reality that her fiancé was a federal fugitive?" "She's in denial about some of it and devastated about the rest. She keeps insisting there must be some explanation that doesn't make Marcus a criminal, but she's also terrified about what this means for your family's business." We pulled into my parents' driveway behind 2 cars I didn't recognize. Jessica explained that one belonged to FBI Special Agent Carol Thompson, who had been assigned to investigate Marcus's fraud case, and the other belonged to David Kim, the attorney my parents had hired to navigate the legal complications. Walking into my childhood home felt surreal after the events of the past 5 days. The living room had been transformed into an impromptu command center with laptops, financial documents, and legal files covering every surface. My father sat at the dining room table across from a professional-looking woman in her 40s, while my mother paced nervously in the kitchen. Sarah occupied the corner of the living room sofa, wrapped in a blanket and looking smaller than I had seen her since childhood. When I entered the room, she looked up with red-rimmed eyes and an expression of pure gratitude mixed with shame. "Tammy," she said quietly, Thank you for coming home. Special Agent Thompson introduced herself and immediately expressed interest in the research I had conducted about Marcus's criminal background. I spent the next 2 hours walking her through my investigation, sharing screenshots of court documents, news articles, and the timeline I had constructed of his fraudulent activities. "This is incredibly thorough work," Agent Thompson said, reviewing my evidence compilation. "We've been tracking this particular fraud network for 8 months without making significant progress. Your research connects dots that our investigation had missed." She explained that Marcus was part of a sophisticated criminal organization that specialized in romance scams targeting family-owned businesses. The group would identify successful small businesses through social media and public records, then have attractive men pursue romantic relationships with daughters or female employees who had access to financial information. Sarah wasn't his first victim, Agent Thompson continued. "We've identified at least 6 other families in the Pacific Northwest who were targeted using identical methods. In each case, the criminal gained access to business accounts through a romantic relationship, then disappeared with stolen money after elaborate wedding plans collapsed." My parents listened to this explanation with expressions of horror and disbelief. The scope of Marcus's deception was even larger than I had discovered through my independent research. "What we need now," Agent Thompson said, "is your help in coordinating a response that might enable us to apprehend Marcus and recover funds for multiple victim families." David Kim, the attorney, explained the legal situation from our family's perspective. The bank's fraud protection had prevented the actual theft of our money, but our business was still dealing with reputation damage and potential client lawsuits. Several clients had already expressed concern about the security of their financial information. "However," he continued, "if we can assist law enforcement in capturing Marcus and his criminal network, that cooperation could completely change how this situation affects your business reputation." Agent Thompson outlined her plan. Marcus and his associates had been careful to avoid digital traces, but my research had revealed patterns in their social media usage and business registration methods. With my marketing and social media expertise, I could help create digital traps designed to lure the criminals into situations where law enforcement could apprehend them. Essentially, she explained, we want to create fake investment opportunities and business profiles that appeal to their specific methods of operation. When they attempt to target our fictional businesses, we'll have them under surveillance and can make arrests. The strategy appealed to me immediately. Instead of waiting passively for law enforcement to solve our problems, I could actively participate in bringing Marcus and his criminal network to justice. My marketing skills, which Sarah had always dismissed as a little marketing job, were exactly what the FBI needed to catch federal fugitives. "There's one more thing," Agent Thompson added. "If this operation succeeds, the federal government offers substantial reward money for information leading to the capture of fugitive criminals. The recovery of stolen funds also triggers victim restitution payments." David Kim leaned forward with interest. "How substantial?" "For a case of this scope with multiple victims and recovered funds, the total reward could exceed $100,000. The room went completely silent. Sarah stared at me with an expression I couldn't interpret, while my parents exchanged glances that suggested they were recalculating everything they thought they understood about my capabilities and value. I spent the rest of the afternoon working with Agent Thompson to design the digital sting operation. We created fictional social media profiles for successful family businesses, crafted online personalities for attractive women who would supposedly have access to financial information, and built elaborate backstories that would appeal to Marcus's criminal network. My years of marketing experience had taught me how to create compelling online content that attracted specific target audiences. Now, I was using those same skills to create criminal traps with the FBI. As evening approached, Sarah finally found the courage to speak to me directly. She approached the corner of the living room where I was working on my laptop and sat down carefully as if afraid I might flee. "Tammy, I need to apologize for things that go way beyond this wedding situation." "I'm listening." "I've been lying to Mom and Dad about you for years," she said quietly. "Not just about the wedding, but about lots of things. I told them you didn't care about family events, that you were jealous of my success, that you were becoming selfish and career-focused." "Why?" She was quiet for a long time before answering. "Because I was jealous of you, and I wanted to make sure Mom and Dad never realized that you were actually the stronger, more capable daughter." The admission surprised me. "You were jealous of me." "You've always been more independent, more resourceful, more able to handle problems on your own," Sarah said. "I needed constant validation and support from Mom and Dad, but you just figured things out and took care of yourself. I was terrified that if they saw how competent you actually were, they would stop treating me like the special one." "So you sabotaged my relationships with them?" "Yes," she said simply. "And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." I looked at my sister wrapped in her blanket and admitting to years of calculated deception, and felt a mixture of anger and pity. Her need for parental approval had driven her to damage our family relationships and ultimately led her into the arms of a federal fugitive. "Sarah, we're going to fix this situation with Marcus and the business," I said. "But after that, we need to have some serious conversations about rebuilding trust between us." "I know," she said, "and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Agent Thompson called me over to review the final details of our digital sting operation. Within 48 hours, we would launch fake business profiles designed to attract Marcus's criminal network. If the plan worked, I would help the FBI apprehend federal fugitives and recover money for multiple victim families. My phone showed a text message from Jessica. "How does it feel to be the family hero?" I typed back, like I'm finally becoming the person I was always supposed to be. Wednesday morning arrived with the kind of gray Seattle drizzle that makes coffee taste twice as important, and everyone moves slightly faster toward indoor destinations. I sat in the FBI field office conference room at 7:30 a.m. surrounded by federal agents' computer equipment and the strangest career opportunity of my life. Agent Thompson had assembled a team of 6 agents specializing in financial crimes and digital surveillance. My role was to serve as social media coordinator for an elaborate sting operation designed to capture Marcus's entire criminal network, using the same romance scam tactics they had perfected against other families. "The beauty of this approach," Agent Thompson explained to the assembled team, "is that Tammy understands both the criminal methods and the social media platforms better than any of us. She can create authentic-looking profiles that will attract our targets without seeming like obvious law enforcement traps." Over the next 8 hours, I worked with federal agents to construct the most elaborate marketing campaign of my career. We created fictional family businesses with realistic websites, social media histories, and financial profiles. We developed personas for attractive young women who would supposedly have access to business accounts and family wealth. The key insight from my marketing experience was understanding what made these criminal targets believe they had found profitable opportunities. Marcus and his associates looked for specific patterns: family businesses with strong social media presence daughters, or female employees who posted about financial success, and evidence of accessible business accounts with substantial balances. We're essentially creating the perfect bait," I explained to Agent Rodriguez, one of the digital surveillance specialists. "Everything about these profiles will appeal to their criminal methodology while giving us complete control over the interaction. By Thursday morning, our fictional businesses were live across multiple social media platforms with carefully crafted content designed to attract romance scammers. The profiles included photos of attractive women, posts about family business success, and subtle hints about access to substantial financial accounts. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 6 hours of launching our fake profiles, we received contact from 12 different men using various social media platforms. The agents monitored all communications while I analyzed the approaches to identify patterns that matched Marcus's previous criminal behavior. "This one," I said, pointing to messages from someone calling himself David Miller. "The language patterns and approach methodology are identical to Marcus's social media history with Sarah." Agent Thompson reviewed the communication chain. David Miller had approached our fictional business owner's daughter with sophisticated charm, detailed questions about family business operations, and romantic overtures that escalated quickly toward discussions of meeting in person. "He's following the exact same script Marcus used with your sister," Agent Thompson confirmed. "Same timeline, same emotional manipulation tactics, same progression toward gaining access to financial information." We spent Thursday afternoon crafting responses that would encourage David Miller to arrange an in-person meeting while gathering evidence of his criminal intentions. The digital surveillance team monitored his communications with other targets and discovered he was simultaneously approaching women in Portland, Spokane, and Vancouver. Friday morning, David Miller proposed meeting our fictional business owner's daughter at a downtown Seattle hotel bar to discuss potential business collaboration opportunities between his technology consulting firm and our fake family business. The meeting was scheduled for Saturday afternoon. "Mo, we'll have plainclothes agents positioned throughout the hotel," Agent Thompson explained. "Your job is to monitor the digital surveillance feed and help us identify if David Miller is actually Marcus or one of his criminal associates." Saturday afternoon, I sat in an FBI surveillance van outside the Grand Hyatt Seattle, watching live video feeds from hidden cameras, while federal agents prepared to arrest whoever appeared for the meeting with our fictional target. At exactly 3:15 p.m., a man in his 30s entered the hotel bar wearing expensive clothes and carrying himself with the confident demeanor I recognized from Marcus's interactions with my family. When he approached the table where our undercover agent was seated, I knew immediately we had found our target. "That's him," I told Agent Thompson. "That's Marcus Chen." The arrest happened quickly and professionally. Marcus was taken into custody without incident, while additional agents simultaneously arrested 2 associates at different locations where they had arranged meetings with other fictional targets we had created. But the real breakthrough came when agents searched Marcus's hotel room and discovered detailed files about not just our family, but 15 other families across the Pacific Northwest. He had been operating a much larger criminal enterprise than anyone had suspected. We found bank account information, business system passwords, and personal data for dozens of potential victims, Agent Rodriguez reported. This operation was planning to steal millions of dollars from family businesses throughout the region. More importantly, agents discovered multiple bank accounts containing money stolen from previous victims. The Financial Crimes Unit estimated that over $2 million in stolen funds could be recovered and returned to families who had been victimized by Marcus's network. Sunday morning, I received a call from Agent Thompson with news that exceeded our best-case expectations. Marcus, facing multiple federal charges and overwhelming evidence, had agreed to cooperate with law enforcement in exchange for a reduced sentence. His cooperation led to the arrest of 7 additional criminals and the recovery of money stolen from 23 different families. Thanks to your investigation and assistance with the sting operation, Agent Thompson explained, "We've dismantled an entire criminal network that has been operating across multiple states for over 4 years. The federal government had authorized substantial reward payments for civilian assistance, leading to the capture of federal fugitives and recovery of stolen funds. My portion of the reward money totaled $125,000. When I called my parents with the news, my father's response was simple: 'We owe you more than money could ever repay.' But the emotional resolution proved even more valuable than the financial outcome." Sarah had spent the week in therapy working with a counselor who specialized in helping victims of romantic fraud recover from psychological manipulation. She was beginning to understand how Marcus had exploited her emotional vulnerabilities and competitive relationship with me. "I need to take responsibility for my part in this," Sarah told me during a family meeting Sunday evening. "Marcus was a criminal, but I was the one who chose to lie to our parents about you for years before he ever appeared." My parents, meanwhile, had spent the week reviewing their business practices and family dynamics with their attorney and accountant. They recognized that their favoritism toward Sarah had created vulnerabilities that Marcus had exploited, and they were committed to rebuilding relationships based on honest communication rather than assumptions. "We're offering you a partnership in Hendricks Accounting," my father announced. "Not as charity or an apology, but because this experience has shown us that your skills and perspective are exactly what our business needs to grow and modernize." The offer represented everything I had wanted from my family for years: recognition, respect, and genuine inclusion in their professional and personal lives. But I had spent the past week discovering capabilities and confidence that extended far beyond working for the family business. "I appreciate the offer," I told them, "but I think I'm ready to start my own consulting business specializing in digital security for family-owned companies." Agent Thompson had already introduced me to several FBI victims assistance coordinators who worked with businesses recovering from financial crimes. My unique combination of marketing expertise and criminal investigation experience made me an ideal consultant for helping families protect themselves from similar frauds. Monday morning, I woke up in my studio apartment with a bank account balance that included federal reward money, a family that finally understood my actual worth, and the beginning of a business plan that could help other families avoid the devastation we had narrowly escaped. My phone showed a text message from Sarah. "I'm proud of you for saving our family and for becoming successful on your own terms." For the first time in 32 years, I believed that my sister was telling me the truth. 6 months later, I stood in the reception area of my new office space in downtown Seattle, reviewing the final details for a consultation with a family-owned restaurant chain that had recently discovered suspicious activity in their financial accounts. The brass nameplate on my door read, "Tammy Hendricks, Digital Security Consultant," and the waiting area showcased testimonials from the 23 families I had helped implement fraud protection systems since starting my business. The federal reward money had provided the foundation for launching Hendricks Digital Security Solutions, but the business had grown beyond my most optimistic projections because of genuine market demand. Apparently, Marcus's criminal network had been one of dozens operating across the country, and family-owned businesses were desperately seeking expertise in protecting themselves from sophisticated fraud schemes. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Thompson. "Another family in Portland wants your consultation services. Romance scam targeting their manufacturing business. Interested?" I typed back, "Send me the details. I can drive down Thursday." The irony of my professional success wasn't lost on me. Sarah's decision to exclude me from her wedding had forced me to develop independence and investigative skills that became the foundation for a thriving business. Being rejected by people who didn't understand my value had led directly to finding work where my unique perspective was not just appreciated, but essential. Sarah had completed 6 months of therapy and was enrolled in community college classes, working toward a degree in social work, with a focus on helping fraud victims recover from financial and emotional trauma. Her transformation from manipulative golden child to genuinely empathetic person had been gradual but unmistakable. "I want to help other people who've been victimized the way I was victimized," she had explained during one of our monthly sister dinners. "But I also want to help people who've been manipulative the way I was manipulative. Understanding both sides of toxic family dynamics might help me prevent other families from going through what we went through." Our parents had undergone their own transformation process. They attended family therapy sessions, restructured their business practices to include better security protocols, and made conscious efforts to treat both daughters as equally valuable family members. The favoritism that had defined our childhood was gradually being replaced by genuine appreciation for different strengths and perspectives. We spent 30 years believing that love meant protecting Sarah from consequences and pushing you toward independence. My mother had reflected during one particularly honest family conversation. "We didn't realize we were teaching Sarah to be helpless and teaching you that you weren't worth protecting. The changes weren't perfect or complete, but they were consistent and authentic." My parents had sold a piece of commercial property to reimburse Sarah's wedding vendors and had established a college fund for any future grandchildren that would be split equally regardless of which daughter provided those grandchildren. Marcus had received a 15-year federal sentence and was currently serving time at a minimum security prison in Colorado, while federal prosecutors continued investigating additional criminal activities. The other members of his network had received sentences ranging from 8 to 12 years, and ongoing investigations suggested that romance fraud targeting family businesses was a much larger criminal industry than law enforcement had previously understood. Most satisfying was the impact on other victim families. The money recovered from Marcus's criminal network had enabled 23 families to reclaim their stolen savings and rebuild their businesses. I had been invited to speak at a federal victims' rights conference about the importance of civilian investigation and cooperation in financial crimes cases. But the deepest satisfaction came from personal relationships that were finally built on honesty rather than manipulation or misunderstanding. Sarah and I had developed an adult friendship based on mutual respect and genuine communication. My parents treated me as a capable professional rather than a disappointment who needed constant guidance. Most importantly, I had learned to recognize my own worth independently of other people's validation or rejection. The skills and perspective that my family had dismissed as unimportant had proven invaluable when the crisis required someone who could think clearly under pressure and investigate complex problems. This morning I received an invitation that perfectly demonstrated how completely my family dynamics had changed. Sarah was planning a small, honest wedding ceremony to a man she had met in her community college psychology class. He was a divorced father of 2 who worked as a high school counselor and had no access to substantial financial accounts. Their relationship was built on shared interests in helping people recover from trauma and genuine emotional connection rather than manipulation or financial opportunism. The invitation read, "Tommy, I would be honored if you would serve as my maid of honor. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness or your participation, but I hope you'll consider being part of a wedding that represents who I'm becoming rather than who I used to be." I called Sarah immediately and told her I would be delighted to stand beside her at a wedding celebration that represented healing and growth rather than manipulation and fraud. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Having your support means more to me than I know how to express." "That's what sisters do," I replied. "Real sisters, anyway." My office phone rang with another potential client, a family bakery in Tacoma that had noticed unusual activity in their business accounts and wanted to implement security protocols before any damage occurred. This was exactly the kind of proactive consultation that proved families could protect themselves from financial predators if they understood what warning signs to watch for. As I answered the phone and began discussing their security needs, I reflected on the lesson that had emerged from my sister's wedding crisis. Sometimes the most painful rejections protect us from situations where we would compromise our authentic selves to gain approval from people who don't understand our actual value. Sarah's cruelty had inadvertently freed me to discover capabilities I never would have developed if I had remained trapped in dysfunctional family dynamics. Being excluded from her fraudulent wedding had positioned me to save our family from devastating financial crime and launched a career that helped other families avoid similar victimization. The greatest revenge against people who underestimate you isn't proving them wrong through anger or confrontation. The greatest revenge is simply becoming so undeniably successful that their previous dismissal of your worth becomes obviously ridiculous. My phone displayed a calendar reminder for Sarah's real wedding next month, where I would stand beside her as maid of honor in a ceremony that celebrated authentic love rather than elaborate deception. The contrast with the wedding I had been excluded from couldn't be more complete. I finished my consultation call and opened my laptop to review the business plan for expanding my consulting services to include online courses for family businesses. The demand for fraud protection education was growing faster than I could provide. Individual consultations and digital courses would allow me to help hundreds of families simultaneously. 6 months ago, I had been the family disappointment who wasn't welcome at my sister's wedding. Today, I was a successful business owner whose expertise was sought by law enforcement agencies, victim advocacy organizations, and families across the Pacific Northwest. The transformation hadn't happened despite Sarah's rejection and manipulation. It had happened because of it. Sometimes, life's greatest gifts come disguised as exclusions from places where we never truly belonged anyway. The key is recognizing when rejection is actually protection and having the courage to build something better on your own terms, rather than fighting for acceptance in spaces that diminish your worth. Have you ever experienced rejection that ultimately led to discovering strengths you didn't know you possessed? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below about times when being excluded from one opportunity opened doors to something much better. Remember to like this video if it resonated with your own experiences, subscribe for more stories about family dynamics and personal transformation, and share this with anyone who might need encouragement about turning painful rejections into powerful new beginnings. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it inspires you to see your own worth clearly, regardless of whether other people recognize it yet. Sometimes the best thing that can happen is discovering you're strong enough to succeed without the approval you thought you needed.